4 feet under your backyard right now, the ground is sitting at a steady 55 degrees. It doesn't matter if it's 98 outside or 15. It has been that temperature since long before your house was built, and it will be that temperature long after you're gone. That's not a guess. It's basic soil physics, confirmed by decades of subsurface temperature monitoring across the U.S., and a small number of people have figured out how to borrow that cold for almost nothing. Here's the problem most of us are living with. Central air conditioning is expensive to run, expensive to repair, and built around a business model that depends on it staying that way. Refrigerant top-offs, annual maintenance contracts, compressor replacements. None of that is evil. It's just how the industry makes money. But it means the simplest, cheapest form of cooling on the planet rarely gets mentioned, because there's no service contract in a coil of buried pipe. That simplest form of cooling is called a ground-coupled or ground source loop, and the idea is almost embarrassingly basic. You bury tubing a few feet down, circulate water through it with a small pump, and let the earth do what it's already doing for free, pulling heat out of that water the same way it keeps a cave, a root cellar, or your basement floor cool in August. The water comes back up cooler than it went in, run it past a small radiator and a fan, and you've got a stream of cooler air for a room. No compressor, no refrigerant, no big electrical draw. This isn't a new discovery. Root cellars have used stable underground temperatures for centuries. Dairy farmers in parts of Pennsylvania have run buried spring water in shallow ground loops through their milk houses for generations, long before anyone called it geothermal. Full-scale ground source heat pumps, the kind that use a compressor and can heat or cool an entire house, have been commercially installed since the mid-1900s and are a recognized, respected technology today, marketed through companies like the members of the International Ground Source Heat Pump Association. The physics comes down to one number worth remembering. Water holds roughly 3,000 to 3,500 times more heat energy per unit volume than air does. That's why a thin loop of tubing carrying water can absorb far more cold from the ground, foot for foot, than a wide duct carrying air ever could. It's the same reason a radiator works better than a fan alone. You're moving the cold through the water, not through the air itself. Now here's where I want to be straight with you, because a lot of videos on this topic oversell it. A small DIY loop, a coil of PEX pipe, a $15 pump, a salvaged car heater core, and a box fan is not going to replace your central air conditioner for the whole house. What it can genuinely do is take the edge off one room, especially in a dry climate where there's little humidity to fight. In Phoenix or Tucson, a well-built loop can meaningfully drop the temperature in a bedroom or workshop with almost no moisture issues. In a humid climate like Houston or coastal Georgia, the same loop still pulls cold from the ground, but you'll need to manage condensation carefully because cold surfaces in humid air sweat the same way a glass of ice water does on a summer porch. Full residential ground source heat pump systems, which do use a compressor and can genuinely handle whole house heating and cooling, typically cost somewhere between $15,000 and $25,000 installed. That's real money, and it's part of why interest in smaller passive versions exists. People want a taste of the same underlying physics without the price tag. Just don't expect a $60 bill to do what a $20,000 system does. If you want to try a small version yourself, here's roughly how it goes. And please take the safety notes seriously because this involves actual digging. Before anything else, call 811 or your local utility locate service to have buried gas, electric water, and communication lines marked. This is not optional. Hitting a buried line with a shovel or trencher can be lethal or catastrophically expensive, and it's a free call. Once your yard is cleared, mark out a trench at least 40 to 60 feet long. You'll need it roughly 24 inches wide, and ideally 4 to 6 feet deep, since that's the depth where ground temperature stays stable through the seasons. Shallower than that, and the soil warms up too much by late summer to help you. Trenches this deep can collapse, especially in loose or sandy soil, so don't work inside an unshored trench deeper than about 4 feet, and never assume the walls will hold. Slope the sides back or rent a trench box if you're going deep. This is the single biggest real risk in this whole project, more than any electrical or plumbing concern. Lay 150 to 200 feet of 3 to 4 inch PEX tubing back and forth along the trench bottom in a serpentine pattern, spacing each pass about a foot apart, and anchor it lightly so it doesn't shift when you backfill. Run both ends up to the surface, backfill and tamp the soil down. Indoors, mount a small radiator. A new universal heater core runs $15 to $25. A salvaged automotive one can be free, inside a simple box with a fan blowing through it. Add a drip tray underneath and a drain line, because condensation will form on the cold surfaces, especially in humid weather. This is completely normal, and every window air conditioner deals with the same issue. Connect a small 12V circulation pump, fill the loop with a garden hose, and bleed the air out until water flows steadily. If you plan to run the loop through freezing winter weather, Mix in food-grade propylene glycol at roughly 20 to 25%. Never automotive ethylene glycol, which is toxic and dangerous if it ever leaks into your soil or a water source. Loop length matters more than most people expect. Shorter loops, under about 120 feet, tend to warm up too fast to keep a useful temperature difference going for more than a couple of hours. Longer loops in the 180 to 200 foot range hold their cooling power much better through a full afternoon. And if you run the system continuously for weeks without a break, the soil right around the pipe will gradually warm from the heat you're dumping into it. Giving it overnight rest, rather than running it 24/7, helps it recover. None of this makes your $60 loop a central air conditioner. It makes it a genuinely clever, low-cost way to take some of the load off one room, using a piece of physics that's been sitting under your feet the whole time. The bigger version of this idea, a real ground source heat pump, is a legitimate, well-studied technology if you ever want to go further. But even the small version is a fair reminder that some of the best engineering isn't complicated. It's just been buried, literally, under a business model that never needed you to notice it. That's it for this one from Hidden Fix Lab. If the ground beneath your yard has been quietly doing this the whole time, it's worth knowing.